And so supporting people of color who are at the center and addressing racial inequities is a way for white people to bring that process to help support that work by doing that in classes that you might be in community spaces that you might be in, and to be supporting people of color. You may have seen there was a recent article about women in Obama's White House, and that one of the ways in which they would support each other, because men often wouldn't hear what they were saying, or men would take the point that they made and make it again, and all the other men would say, oh, that's a good point, as if a woman hadn't just said it. So they had this strategy they would use that they called shining. One woman would make a point, and then another woman would repeat the point and credit the woman who said it. In a similar way as white people, we can do that by recognizing when people of color make points, repeating it, and giving them credit for it. And I think for a lot of us, it's really recognizing that we are humble descendants, a term from Dove Kent at Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, of so many white racial justice activists before us, of the Grimke sisters, of John Brown, of Anne Braden. There are so many others whose histories we haven't learned, and none of them are perfect. Many of them have flaws, but that we're not the first people to invent this, and we won't be the last. And so part of what we know can result in having a disconnection from other white people who are less racially conscious is we can have this feeling of superiority. We can police and punish other white people because we can say they don't have the right theory or they don't have the right analysis, or they're not as woke as we are. And I think one of the real challenges for us is how do we love other white people and call them in? At Showing Up for Racial Justice or Surge, one of our real values is how do we call other white people in instead of calling them out? And one of the things that can happen is that we can divert attention from fighting racism by trying to call out other white people in the process. And I think if we can instead, as we become more racially conscious, really focus on how we are bringing other people into this work, and notice that we can sometimes get more judgmental of other white people. As we become more aware of racial justice and of oppression, we can, want to be the person who has the best analysis in the room. We can want to have other people to work with but feel like they're not at the same point as us. So how do we be gentle with each other as we're feeling that disconnection, even if they're not in exactly the same place as us?
It's actually interesting, but to some degree, she's saying that we shouldn't be racist to white people. She's saying that we shouldn't prejudge white people and we shouldn't immediately attack them and try to find ways to work with them, without specifically saying, don't be racist to white people. It's like there's some part of her soul that's still remaining there, but it's being...
There's some little spark of humanity.
Yeah. And these other two women are going to try to convince us that white people shouldn't be a part of the conversation. And yet this person is saying, like, look, we can't hold white people under contempt if we want them to work with us. We can't guilt them into this. We got to show them that it's the right thing to do and accept them for who they are. This is the most anti-racist thing I have heard from feminism in a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically towards white people.
And one of the other ones will probably say something that completely wipes it out.
How do we still continue to connect with other people and have a sense of belonging with other white people, even if there are places where we might not always agree? I have a Republican brother, and I still try to connect with him over meals when we're together, when our families are together, and it's a struggle. And we try to find places where we can do that.
Okay, hold on. She says, I have a Republican brother, and I try to connect with him. My sister supports Hillary, and it doesn't bother me. I talk to her almost every day. We don't argue. We just don't bring up politics, and when we do, it's typically in a joking fashion. I mean, I went up to New York to see her and my two nieces, and my nieces were out on the sidewalk drawing with sidewalk chalk. So I went down, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote on the sidewalk, Trump 2016. And my sister laughed about it, and that was it. But she's like, I have to work at connecting with him. No, it's called not being a dick.
Or being a cunt in this case.
Yeah, like just be a civil human being. You can have a disagreement with someone and still be like, I still like you as a person. You're still a friend to me.
Well, you know, I was talking about my social justice warrior friends. We get along great, especially when we talk about the things that we're passionate about, so long as we leave gender politics out of it. I mean, hell, she told me that she refused to vote for Hillary, that she thought Hillary was the worst representation for women, which surprised me. She supported Bernie Sanders instead, which I still didn't support Bernie Sanders, but, you know, we didn't need to talk about it all the time. And then when we did, we tread carefully with each other because our friendship to each other was so important that we didn't want to lose it just for having such a drastic difference of opinion. She knows that I deal a lot within the men's movement, and to some degree she's helped out here and there with that. But mostly she is a feminist. She's a social justice warrior. That's what she does, and I love her to death. She's like a little sister to me in many ways. But you have difficulty getting along with your brother? That sounds like you don't know how to turn off the politics when you're with family.
There are some situations where there has to be a measure of separation between, say, an idea and a person. You can have an idea and another person can have a different idea, but at some point in time, if you want to have a polite relationship with them, there has to be a measure of separation between your idea and that person's idea. You can't make those two differing opinions be the only thing that matters, because if you do, that person will not be in your life for very long.
And as we become more racially conscious, we can have that judgmentalness, or we can lose our sense of belonging in family and community. And one of the things that we really struggle to do is really to examine ourselves, because again, we can have implicit biases that come up because we think we have the analysis the best figured out, and we still need community. We still need to be connected to other white people and to find ways in which we can do that in an ongoing way so that we get support as well, even if our analysis isn't exactly the same.
I think it comes back to this notion that nobody is disposable. And that's really the type of world that we're trying to create.
Yeah.
Where nobody is disposable and everybody matters. Right? And so we've all been on, no one is as conscious as they were a year ago, as conscious as they were, well, everybody's consciousness is at different levels, different parts of their lives, right? I was far less conscious a year ago, far, far, far less 5 years ago, far, far less when I was a child, obviously. Right? And so understanding that this is on a spectrum, right? And we all experience these things to various degrees. So now I want to put a little time in just to have folks really, I know we've thrown a lot at you, but was there a particular pain that really most resonated with you? Is there a particular of the three pains, something that you're like, yeah, like that shows up a lot in my life, right? And you can share that in the chat box, maybe. Is that what's going on in the chat box? I know we got some trolling going on there intensely.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Folks are trying to ignore them as we work to get rid of them. So right now, folks aren't. There's a few answers here. White shame, which white people have privilege. There's number 3. It's actually breaking up my white woman anti-racist group. White privilege means I get accused. I don't know about that. Very angry and frustrated with other people. Confusion. Dara is the name of the woman who was speaking before Sandra. The rabbit hole. Sorry, I'm answering questions as I read this.
How about you tell us what the questions are?
Instead of giving one word from the sentence.
So it's going very quickly, trying to keep it up, but rabbit hole and number 3 is the ones I kind of see over and over and over again. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this work, is really about being able to be with the pain of living in a society that really wants us to oppress and exploit each other and ourselves, to be quite honest. We oftentimes are the biggest abusers to ourselves, right? Because we've internalized this. We keep doing this to ourselves, even if nobody else is physically next to us doing it to us. And so if we ignore that pain and we keep denying that pain, then we can never take care of it, so we can then never heal, right? And so we get stuck. Even when we want to do something like act around racial justice, because we have this core pain that we have not taken care of, it drives us because we fear bringing that pain forward again.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that these three cores of whiteness also affect you? Are you saying that you're actually white and not Asian? I know that's not what she's saying, but it does sound like that's what she's saying. What she's actually saying is that we all have our personal demons to deal with and we need to address them. But that's not the message that they've given. They've stated that white people need to solve the problems, that white people need to bring down the system, that need to get rid of racism. Once again, she's confusing the messages. On one hand, she's saying you need a clean house, but on another hand, she's saying that white people are the ones who created this, they need to be the ones to stop it. Then on the other hand, she's saying you need to deal with your own personal shit in order to begin the process of healing. And that saying even she has her personal demons. It's like you're really mixing the messages here, and you're not even listening to yourself.
I'm going to just take as many ideas as I can cram into a single statement and just blend them all together and hope that you can somehow understand what I'm trying to say, even though it seems like she doesn't even fully understand what she's trying to say.
Right? And so if instead we learn how to sit with it, right? And just acknowledging that the most ways that people try to get in touch with their pain is through a really toxic and unhealthy way, and so it blows up in your face, and so then people more don't want to deal with their pain. Just FYI, I got you. Like, I've got a different way of doing it. You don't know what it is yet, but just wait. So just kind of noticing that, compassion, people want to talk about how do we become more compassionate. Well, compassion is a feeling. Compassion is a feeling, folks. And feelings, just like the weather, they come and they go. We don't control them. If we could control feelings, then we would be happy all the time. But clearly we're not happy all the time, so we can't control our feelings, right?
Oh, that's a cop-out. There's some feelings you can't control and others you can control. It's a lot more complicated than that. You can't just say that you can't control your emotions. You can control your emotions to some level. Some things hit you hard, like depression, that you can't get over, but other times you can choose to be happy when you don't want to be happy.
Or you can choose to not continue being angry. You can be pissed off at someone and think, I want to punch this person in the face, and go, no, that would be wrong. Calm down, take a breath, and try to express yourself in a better way. That would be controlling your emotions. That is done on a daily basis by most people.
I mean, if you're saying that you can't control your emotions, then how are you saying that white people can overcome their toxic whiteness? Oh, again, that's right, because white people don't have emotions. That's what you said. They're not in connection with their emotions. Well, what does it look like to be in connection with your emotions if you just said you can't control your emotions? How are you connected to them then?
It kind of seems like whoever was actually in charge of this picked 3 people and just gave them a bunch of pamphlets and said, read these pamphlets, and they read through them, and they're just trying to regurgitate all of the crap that they read in these tiny little pamphlets and trying to expand upon it without actually knowing the materials because they had very limited time to put it together and very little information in the pamphlets.
You know, at least with potheads, they at least tell you what drugs they're taking when they, say their useless babble. These harpies don't bother telling us what drugs they're on, because my God, they must be high on something.
But I think people try to make themselves feel compassion. You can't do that. What you can do is focus on the pain. Get in touch with the pain, because compassion is when in the presence of pain that you are moved to alleviate the suffering, right? So this is why it's so important to get in touch with the pain, and that's why the only way out of this is through. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what are some ways that we can do it. And like I said, this is a 90-minute workshop. We wanted to give you the general framework, and there's a lot that we threw at you, but we didn't want to leave you hanging there, of course. So I want to talk a bit about what is a simple tool that we can use, and to move from a place where we're resisting the reality that systemic racism is happening, that we have implicit biases that we've all been brainwashed with, right? And so how do we move from there where we get really stuck? And we don't know what to do. We want to do something, but we're afraid to, and we do this business. And instead, we start to move a little bit, shift a little bit. At least there's a possibility. And there's this thing that I use. You may have seen this around a little bit, and it goes yes, but versus yes, and. Okay? So I'm going to give you some examples. And so the yes, but is really, it takes two existing realities.
It would be great if your videos weren't blocking some of the wording so we can get a full context of what it's saying, because I'm a little bit... I get the gist of it, but I'm really curious on what it specifically says. Yes, I don't always know when something's racist, but I'm so scared of saying something racist. Yes, I don't always know when something I'm assuming is racist, and I'm scared I'll say something racist. You know what? I don't always know when I say something that is racist, but I would hope that if I do say something racist, other people will point it out to me. But I can't live my life in fear of what I will say, or else I'll say nothing at all. I can't live that way.
Or at least when they point it out, it's not in an accusatory way. It's, hey, you said this and it kind of came off as this. Can you clarify? Or, I know that's not what you meant, but just to let you know, that's how it kind of came off. Instead of, that's racist, you're a horrible person.
You know, I actually experienced something like this a few weeks ago. On my Facebook, I had posted a meme I thought was very funny, but it insulted someone. And the meme said, in an alternate universe, Jesus Christ would be a member of the Avengers. I thought it was cute. I thought it was funny, a reflection of culture and society. But a Christian friend of mine was insulted by this. And he asked me, why do you hate Christians? Because I'm an atheist. I'm like, I don't really hate Christians. I just don't like Christianity. You know, for the most part, I don't really have a problem with Christians individually. And we got into this long talk, and it basically concluded in, just try to be mindful of what you post on Facebook. I don't like censoring myself, but, to spare the feelings of a friend, I become a little bit more conscious of what I post on there. Because I don't want to insult them. He told me that something I did affected him. He talked to me in a very calm manner. We discussed it, we hashed it out, and we came to a compromise. Why is that such a bad thing?
And a lot of people don't fully understand compromise. Compromise is not just something that one person makes, it's something that both people make. It's like your friend obviously compromised on the fact that understanding you are an atheist, you have a different opinion, and you will occasionally be posting things like that, and not to take offense to it. It's not meant as a jab, it's just something that you posted that you found funny.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, so the next point, I'm going to read through these before they really get through them. Yes, I want to speak up against racism more, but I don't know when speaking up becomes speaking over POC. Yes, I want to speak up, probably up, against racism more, but I don't know when speaking up becomes speaking over POC, and that's okay.
And where does this whole concept that because you make an opinion known, suddenly that deprives someone else of doing the same and making their opinion known? You're not speaking over, you're speaking with.
And you know what? Conversation is like this. You know, when I first started to try to integrate myself within society as a whole, because just a long series of things, there was a lot of things I didn't understand, and it was the act of conversation that really threw me off at first. Because I always believe that you give people the full ability to say what they need to say, and then you speak in connection with them. But then it's kind of the other person's responsibility to give you the opportunity to speak. And the one thing I kept finding, especially among women, is that women will just constantly keep talking. They'll even repeat the same point over and over again a couple of times throughout it and never give anyone else the opportunity to speak. So the only way, and girls, what they'll do with each other is they'll interrupt each other and make their points. And will even interrupt men when they try to make their points, and men try to give them respect to make their points so they can make their point. It's kind of like how you and me are. We haven't really interrupted each other. We've given each other the opportunity to say what we do. But it's because this is how men communicate and women communicate the way they do. But in order to communicate with women, you have to interrupt them. But what I tend to find is that women are very quick to point out that you've interrupted them. It doesn't matter if they've interrupted you, and will even deny that they interrupted you. I've never interrupted you. I gave you the chance. No, you didn't. You interrupted me, and I didn't get to finish my point. You took one small sample of something I said and made it my entire point. Now, I'm bad at conversations. I'll admit that. It takes me a long time to get to the point. It's something I'm trying to work on. But I can't do that if I have to constantly keep interrupting people.
It's like I've always had a similar issue because I have high-functioning autism. So having a conversation has always been somewhat of a problem, which is why I like having conversations, which is why I don't do as many videos on my channel as I should be, because I'm a lot better with having conversations because I've pushed myself to have as many conversations as I can. And if I'm just responding to a video by myself, it kind of feels like I'm just repeatedly banging my head into a table.
This whole concept of talking over people, that's just how human communication is. Sometimes we interrupt each other to make the points that we need to make because the other person's not giving us an opportunity, or we're just so used to that level of communication that we just do it without thinking about it. We don't mean to do it. It's not malicious. And yet they're saying, well, when you do that to someone who's a person of color, it's malicious. It's racist. You're awful for doing it. All people do it.
Yeah, it's like they're saying you've ended their ability to speak. No, I've just made a point. Now is the time for them to make a point. It's called a conversation. It continues until people say, okay, conversation's over, and they go their separate ways.
And if someone interrupts you, it's like, hey, you interrupted me. I need to finish my point.